Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala Yousafzai has boarded the Oscar shortlisted documentary short film Strangers at the Gate as executive producer.
I wanted to spread the message because it is so important that we talk about connections, we talk about the importance of our values, including compassion and kindness towards others. And BB's role in this story is so critical. It tells us about the power of our values. And so is Mac's willingness to listen, to connect, to give kindness and love a chance to change his life. When I saw this documentary, I had so many questions after that. It was about the role of the military, the institutions, and it was also the role of media and how it can create perceptions about a community, Muslims, uh, Jews, or people from any faith or any background. And you realize that all of this is not limited to Mac and BB's story, it is happening everywhere. Minorities, vulnerable communities face this day to day based on their identity, whether that's their skin color, their gender, their religion. And that's why I was like, this is so important that we spread the message of this documentary. And I hope that people will start a discussion about the role of media, perceptions, and the institutions as well. And I think hopefully we will see a change as well.
Okay, so we're talking about your film Stranger at the Gate, which is fascinating. One of the reasons it's fascinating to me is you had a TV series, Secret Lives of Muslims, and usually a TV series doesn't get flipped into a movie. It's usually the other way around. So how did this come to
Right.
be?
Yeah, it was that. So yeah, Secret Life of Muslims. It was actually a web series,
Mm-hmm.
and the way it started was it actually started in my childhood. If we want to go that far back, I was,
Sure.
I grew up in upstate New York in Schenectady, and I happened to be one of not many Jewish families up there.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was growing up, I faced some anti-Semitism. Kids call me names, Jewish Josh, Jew Kike.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kids threw pennies at me in the hallway in middle school to see if I'd bend over to pick them up, so they
Mm-hmm.
could say, "Oh, see, Jews are cheap." And so that stuff stayed with me for sure as I
Mm-hmm.
grew up. And when I became a filmmaker, and in right after 9/11, I started to see my Muslim friends facing a lot of hate, and
Mm-hmm.
it was familiar to me. And I thought, well, what can I do as a filmmaker to make a difference? So I started this series called Secret Life of Muslims.
I live and breathe Brooklyn. People described me as argumentative, talkative, super friendly. I literally can talk to a wall. And I have perfected the art of telling it like it is. That's the first way that you know that I'm a true Brooklynite.
And the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing was, it was a platform for Muslim people to tell their stories and to talk about what it's like to be Muslim in America. And the title was kind of a joke, because the
Mm-hmm.
secret life of Muslims was that they're people like you and me.
In my religion, if I see somebody needs my help and I'm able, I must help.
Mohammed Bazik knows that the children he takes into his home are dying.
Mm-hmm.
But it was playing on this idea at the time where people thought, oh, or what's going on? Are there secrets that we need to know? And so we did, I think, 25 short films, which were on the web, and got a ton of views. I think more than 70 million views. And we got nominated for an Emmy and a Peabody, and it was really great.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the stories that we came across was about this guy named Richard McKinney, who
Hmm.
had been living in Indiana. He was a war veteran, and he had decided that he was going to blow up the mosque in Muncie in his hometown.
Hmm.
And so, we had found this story and we had met him. His story is incredible. And that's how we found the kernel of the story for Stranger at the Gate, which is, I think, the film we're going to talk more about now.
I get a knock at the door and hear two guys in a suit. I'm from the FBI. The first thing I have to say is, what took you guys so long? I told them the truth. I was going to make my own IED, and I was going to set across the Islamic Center over in a bank's parking lot, and I was going to dial it in and just watch the show.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a fascinating story. I had somebody like that on my other podcast. A war vet, became a druggie and an alcoholic, and eventually became a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And when he was, pretty rock bottom, somebody introduced him to a Muslim cardiologist in Atlanta, and they became best buddies, and he's totally turned his life around. It's amazing. So
Yeah,
you never know who's going to be the positive influence on your life.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's what Stranger at the Gate is about. Richard McKinney decided he was going to blow up the mosque, so he actually went to the mosque. He had built the bomb, and he went to
Yeah.
the mosque to do some recon. And when he got there, he pretended that he wanted to join the mosque, and
Hmm.
there's this guy who shows up in a, dirty tank top, crew cut, um, you know, looks very nervous, is pacing around, and the people at the mosque, the people who actually founded the mosque, it's a family named the Baramis. They looked at this guy and they thought, this guy's got issues, like there's something wrong with this guy. They
Hmm.
knew right away, and um, they invited him in, and they were very kind to him, and they tried to care for him.
Just anyone who needed a place to stay, I will welcome them to stay with me from all walks of life. They will come to our house, I will wash their clothes and clean their clothes and cook for them.
My dad calls my mom the Mother Teresa of the Muslim community, and it's definitely true. It's in her DNA to just be that self-sacrificer, to really put her everything on the line to make even one person's life better.
And I think that's kind of what he needed. And he appreciated that. And then he came back the next day, and he started coming back all the time. And they became friends. And over time, do you want me to give away what happens in the film?
I think you can.
Yeah. So over time, he decided that he wanted to join the community, and become Muslim. And, I think that the folks in the mosque were like, whoa, 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 slow down. You don't need to do that. And he said, no, I know I want to. And he became Muslim, and he was a big part of the community. And then, of course, the FBI shows up one day and says, hey, do you all know that this guy, Richard McKinney, was building a bomb and was planning to kill you? Because they had finally caught up with him. And they had no idea. So the first thing that, the FBI said, what do you want to do? And they said, well, we'll handle it.
I looked around thinking about my plan, and I actually looked at individuals like, yep, he's gone. He's gone.
My first impression of McKinney was he seemed to be like a redneck. So it was somewhat scary in the beginning, but he came to the masjid and he's like a guest also. So I couldn't help it except to hug him and make him feel, not artificially, from my heart, that he is welcome.
So they invited Richard over for dinner at their house, cooked a big meal, and they sat down and ate. And then when they were done eating, they said, "Richard, is it true that you were planning to kill us?" And Richard lowered his head, and he was ashamed, and he said, "Yes, it's true. I was planning that, and I'm a different person now. You showed me how to be a different person." And he said, and I hope you trust that I would never do you any harm. And they forgave him. And soon after that, he became the president of the mosque. And to this day, he's still a big part of the community. That was several years ago.
How did killing people change you?
Never really told that. Hold on a second, man. I was a fairly happy kid. I had friends. I liked to run the streets. In high school, I'd gotten in a lot of trouble. My biggest downfall is I was involved in drugs, both using and selling. It made life harder on me. Made school it did make school impossible. I joined the Marines at 18. I saw it as a respect thing. My dad came from nothing. Big family, poor. He had quit school, joined the military, and he did 4 years in the Marine Corps. By me joining the military, not only the military, but the Marine Corps, and going through some of the same stuff he went through, I figured I'd get his respect. I didn't have it, but I knew it would get me away from what I was doing. I was in the military for a long time, around 25 years. Towards the end of my military career, I was a totally different person. The fact of being involved in so many deaths over years, it was a crazy time, man. I don't even know. I probably would have been committed if they would have actually known the way I was acting. One time I had a discussion with a higher ranking person about coping. He looked at me straight in the eye. He says, "Mac, you're on the range, you're shooting at a paper target. As long as you can look at them as anything but human, you won't have any problems."
So it's just a beautiful story of, forgiveness and transformation, how we're capable of changing as human beings, and kindness and forgiveness. And I just was very drawn to the story for a number of reasons. And it's a film we're all really proud of.
These people were just plain old pleasant. Happy to be alive, happy to be in America. Just happy. And more than happy to talk to me.
I personally believe that we need to be kind to those people even more. The people sometimes they might have some difficulty, some concern, some stress. I personally believe that we should be more kind to those than people who are successful or who are already know what they're doing.
I have two thoughts on this, probably more, but we'll start with two. Like on Richard's side, I can't imagine it would be very easy to just start a conversation with your new friends and say, "Oh, by the way, I was building a bomb." and fess up. So I wonder what would have happened if the FBI hadn't somehow gotten there.
It's a good question. I don't know. I think that, Richard was talking about it.
Mhm.
He just didn't tell them. He was speaking about it. He was actually in college at the time because he
Mhm.
was out of the military, and he
Yeah.
was getting his education at a
GI
late,
Bill.
yeah, exactly, in the GI Bill. And one of his professors, he confided in his professor and told them the story, and they said,
Wow.
you need to share this story and let other people know because it could help change the world. So Richard, what he first did was he gave a talk to one of his classes at his college, and someone in the class heard the story and called the FBI and said, this guy might be crazy.
Mhm.
Check on this bomb. And that's how it all came to a head. So he may have been planning to tell them
Mhm.
at some point anyway, and that it would have been interesting to see what happened. But I would imagine that it would have turned out in the same way it did, which is
Yeah.
forgiveness.
I think going to his professor was his biggest cry for help, his initial cry for help, and then being able to uh, let it all out in front of the class that sort of put him on that pathway.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that people can critique almost every religion in the world. They can always find, they do this, they do that, and put such a negative spin on it. But the majority of the people I meet and my friends meet are just good people trying to live their lives. And they're out of those stereotypes. They're just removed from them. But it's
Yeah.
the few. So
It's amazing what a few people who have extreme ideas can do to taint an entire group of people,
mhm.
and that goes for a lot of different groups, not just Muslims.
I started thinking, between being drunk and sober, I was brainstorming, how can I make this right? My country's done with me, but I'm not done with it. I would die for that cloth. Gladly. So I came up with a plan. I said, okay, not an explosive expert by no means, but I knew enough to make a bomb. Let me find a good place where I think I can get the most bang for my buck. My plan was to detonate an IED right outside the Muncie Islamic Center on a Friday afternoon when they were all gathered, and I was hoping for at least 200 or more dead, injured, at least. That was my goal, 200 or more.
I mean, I think a skateboard park in Virginia got bombed because the guy used to be a Democrat and now he's more libertarian. So it was his skate park. They bombed it. Like, that's a political statement. So you've been involved in you've been involved in the web series, you've done TV because you did oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. And you've done full-blown movies. I mean, you've been all over the place. How do you decide what your next project's going to be?
It's a combination of design and fate, I think.
Mhm.
And I sort of think that the challenge of any filmmaker is to figure out what the right balance is between those two things. You know, how
Mhm.
much do you let your career be led by opportunities that come to you, and people you meet, and how much do you try to design it and pick your goals and targets and try to make those happen.
Mhm.
And I think that's been my lifelong kind of struggle of like how much do I do one or the other? And
Mhm.
there have been parts of my career where I've sort of just let the opportunities come in and I just would say yes to everything. And then there have
Mhm.
been times in my career where I've said, especially as I've gotten older, where I've said, you know, I don't know how much more time I have. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know how many more films and other projects I'm gonna have time to do,
Mhm.
and I need to pick carefully,
Mhm.
uh, because I wanna make the most of the time I have. You know, the when I started as a filmmaker, I was, you know, in college, I was planning to be a doctor, and,
Mhm.
I was gonna join Doctors Without Borders, and I was gonna travel the world and help people who are in need. And,
Sorry, can
and
I interrupt?
of
Didn't you
course,
grow up as an Orthodox Jew?
no,
Oh, okay.
no.
Wikipedia strikes again.
Huh. I grew up Jewish, but not
Mhm.
Orthodox.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, so that was my plan. And when I took a year off after college before I
Mhm.
went to medical school, and I made a film.
Mhm.
And the film was about the abandoned children of Romania, the Romanian orphans. And this was in 1990 when, communism had just fallen. And it was discovered there were over 100,000 children who had been abandoned and were living in institutions there. And so I went over and I made a documentary. I was 22. And when I came back and put it together, it it ended up being broadcast on public television across the
Mhm.
country, and the film led to the American adoption of thousands of Romanian children. And at that moment I thought, maybe this filmmaking thing is could achieve some of my goals.
Mhm.
And so going forward I always felt that pressure in a
Mhm.
sense to be able to achieve with my films what I would have achieved as a physician who was traveling the world trying to help people. And
Mhm.
and so I've always felt um, that pressure to do that um,
Mhm.
with the film work.
In December 1989, after 25 years of dictatorship, Nicolae Ceausescu was overthrown and executed. Left behind are tens of thousands of abandoned children, the byproduct of Ceausescu's inhumane attempt to increase Romania's population. Many of these children will be channeled into Romania's most deplorable institutions, warehouses for the sick and handicapped. As the torrents of change have swept through Eastern Europe, they have uncovered one of the grimmest side effects of the Ceausescu era.
And you were, was it a Peabody you were nominated for, or an Emmy for that?
That was an Emmy. That was my first national Emmy nomination at 22, which was very exciting. Yeah. It was easier to explain to my parents that I wanted to become a filmmaker instead of a doctor when I had an Emmy and also this film that was creating social change. Was that made things a little bit easier to explain.
Mhm. Well, I know I did pre-med and, wrote the MCAT and the dentistry one and all that. And I would not have been able to put together a film at 22. I mean, it's just that, you know, what was in you that allowed you to make a film? Like, you have to have a lot of skills to make a film.
You know, I think I was motivated by terror and
Mhm.
fear because I was taking this leap. I was jumping out of the path I was supposed to be on and the path that, you know, my family wanted me to be on.
Mhm.
And I knew that I couldn't fail. There was no choice
Mhm.
but to succeed. And so I would sit and watch films, you know, other people's films over and over and over again and like study every edit and every cut and every bit of structure. I mean, I didn't know much. I hadn't gone to film school, but
Mhm.
I was trying to teach myself. And then I had some, you know, collaborators, but I filmed the film, you know, and I didn't know much about cameras, but I filmed it and I edited it. And I just, I don't know, I put a ton of pressure on myself. I don't think I, in those couple of years, I don't think I saw many friends, you know, I
Mhm.
don't think I did much besides just work on that film.
Mhm.
And because I knew it had to be good or good
Mhm.
enough. And
Mhm.
so yeah, and I did have a mentor, um, a filmmaker named David Sutherland,
Mhm.
who guided me, and he would, you know, he would give me advice, and he would look at my edits, and he would tell me what I needed to do, and so I wasn't totally out there alone. Um,
Mhm.
and I would recommend that to any young filmmakers. If you can find a mentor, that's one of the first steps.
Mhm. And you did this all, you know, before there were YouTube cheat videos, you know, how do I film a scene from this, or if how do I, you know, how do I use this? And you know, before there were GoPros and Apple phones to make your filming easier. This is just amazing to me.
Yeah,
So kudos to you.
but remember, there was high eight video. It was like this brand new thing,
Mhm.
which, you know, at the time was a big deal. Probably no one
Mhm.
even remembers what it was now. But there was this thing called high eight video. It was little cassette tapes
Mhm.
that would go into a video camera. And what was special about it, it was the first version of like home video cameras that were actually broadcast quality.
Mhm.
And so it opened up a whole world to young filmmakers that you could make a film. You could go to B&H and buy a camera for, you know, $2,000 or $1,500, and
Yeah.
you could go out and make a film that could be broadcast on television. And that
Mhm.
was a new thing at that time. And so that's what I did. It, you know, it was something that just opened itself up to me, um, with the new technology that was coming out at that time. So, you know, now there are all these other things and phone, you know, you could use your iPhone to make a film, but at that time we had high eight and it was like a revelation. Now, if
Mhm.
you look at a high eight camera and video, it doesn't look so good.
Yeah. Oh, that's unfortunate. So you've been doing this about 30 years now, roughly?
Yeah. Yeah, I made my first film in 90. So 35 years.
So what's coming up next for you?
So I'm working on a new film. It's a short documentary, and it's about
Mhm.
it's called All the Empty Rooms,
Mhm.
and it's about the empty rooms left behind by children who've been killed in school shootings.
Mhm.
And we are getting close to finishing, and we're gonna release it this fall.
So do you do the tour of all the documentary festivals, and like Toronto here has Hot Docs coming up? Do you have
We
to make a presence?
Yeah, our plan is for that film, this new film, to be a part of the festival circuit in the fall. So we're currently entering festivals and hoping for the best, that, you know,
Mhm.
and hoping for a great reception of the film. So because we really want the film to have an impact and reach
Sure.
people.
Is there are there any tricks you've learned over the years how to get past the gatekeepers in the film festivals? Or maybe you don't want to share those.
I mean, it's hard. Even 35 years into a career,
Mhm.
it's hard. It's always hard. There's always, new people at the festivals, and um, obviously, when you enter a festival, there might be, you know, 9,000, 10,000 more entries. Um,
Wow.
and you need to be, how do you become one of those like 50 films they pick, Um,
Mhm.
it's almost impossible to stand out. So you need to find a way to get it on the radar of the people who decide. And
Mhm.
and that's the key, I think. And you can't force them to like your film, but you can try to hope that they'll watch it.
Mhm.
And I think that's the key, is trying to make sure that the right people at least know about it and maybe
Mhm.
take a look at it, and then you hope that they like it.
I forget who I was talking with, and they said there's something like 10,000 comedians currently working in North America as stand-ups, and there's probably like 400 of them that make a living. Do you think this is the same with documentary and short filmmakers?
I think there's probably fewer documentary filmmakers that are making a living than 400.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really hard. It's a really hard business to make a living in, and it always
Mm-hmm.
has been. There was a period of time, in the last several years where I think it was easier to make a living than it had ever been before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as streamers um, wanted more and more content to fill their streaming services, but that's shifting. Everyone knows
Mm-hmm.
that that's shifting into more of a contraction, and it's hard again. It's sort of going back to what it used to be,
Mm-hmm.
um, before that era. So, and that was a time when, you know, if you were a documentary filmmaker, you had to go beg, borrow, steal um, to get your film made, and it might take years to do. And I feel like we're sort of shifting back into that era, which is what
Mm-hmm.
it was like when I started. Um, so it's um, familiar territory, but it's hard, and you have to piece it together.
Mm-hmm.
But people are still making films, and I don't know how many people are actually making a living, but there's a lot of passion in the
Mm-hmm.
documentary community, um, and a lot of people who really care and want to tell stories that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so the beat goes on. It's still going. It's just a little harder now than I think it was.
So at this point, would you consider doing a documentary about yourself trying to go back to med school and following you around?
Um, if you mean if I went back to med school now,
Yeah.
um,
The pendulum swings both ways, as you were just saying. So maybe this is your sort of full
there have
circle.
been there have been many times over the years
Mm-hmm.
as I've been working as a filmmaker where I've thought like, oh man, I made a huge mistake. I should have gone to med school. Um, so I definitely have thought about that a lot, but I think it's too late now to go back. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I definitely don't think I'd want to make a documentary about it. So I don't
Okay.
think I could remember. I don't think my brain is functioning at a high enough level these days to be able to, you know, survive med school and
Mm-hmm.
memorize all that stuff. I mean, that's the work of a younger brain, I think.
That can handle sleep deprivation and all that goes along with it. So,
Absolutely.
Josh, unfortunately, we're almost out of time. So, is there anything you'd like to close with? Some words of wisdom? Anything along that line?
Sure. Yeah. I think I think it's just important to not give up hope. You know, I know a lot of people in the film world, in the documentary world, feel a little bit worried and down and concerned about the opportunities that are available for work, and also to have their work seen. And I think it's, you know, we just have to keep fighting and pushing and making important work and believing it'll get out there. And again, I feel like we've just shifted back to, it feels very familiar to me, to the years when I started in the 90s and early 2000s, where it was really hard and you had to fight to get films made and to get them seen. And I think we've just slipped back to that era a little bit, but it doesn't mean we can't do important work and feel gratification from that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joshua. I wish you continued success, and I can't wait to see what else you create.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And to everybody tuning in, thanks for watching Documenting Reality by the Documentary Channel. Please like, share, subscribe, give us a rating, comment, whatever all the cool kids tell you to do, and have yourself a great week. Bye-bye.
When I first saw him, I remember saying, there's something not right with this guy.
He seemed to be like a redneck.
I was hoping for at least 200 or more, dead, injured.
I invited him over for dinner. He didn't know anything better.
I couldn't help it except to make him feel from my heart that he is welcome.